bestow some wealth upon me. So Lord Shiva came to him in his dreams and said, the wealth that you were seeking actually is in Vrindavan with this Babaji called Sanatan Goswami. You search him out, he'll be able to help you. So the Brahmana, taking words to task, he went to Vrindavan. And then when he got to Vrindavan, Sanatan was there. We know Sanatan Goswami was completely absorbed in his bhajan of Sri Krishna. There's a picture of Sanatan, the 6 Goswamis on the altar, and they're all dressed in loincloths. So he had a loincloth and a pair of kopans and nothing else, and he was sitting there by the sandy shores of the Yamuna River. That place is still there now, the Madhaman Temple, next to KC Garden, and he was doing his bhajan. So the Brahmana came up to him and he said, "Oh, greetings, Sanatan, Lord Shiva sent me, he said that you could bestow some wealth upon me." He goes, "Look at me." He goes, "I've got a loincloth, right? That's all I've got. How am I going to give you any wealth?" And then he remembered somewhere, some time ago, he come across the possession of a Chintamani stone. So a Chintamani stone is a particular rare stone where if you touch it to any iron object, it'll turn to gold. So he said, "That's right, actually there was a Chintamani stone I had, but I threw it over there near the river in the sandy shores. You put it nice loose sand, and it's all covered over, and I can't remember where I put it." So the Brahmana, he went and he started fossicking through the sand. Sure enough, he found the Chintamani stone. And there was an old iron utensil there, and he touched it to the iron utensil, and gold! Oh, all right. So, very excited. So, got the Chintamani stone and started making his way back to Kazi, and all this problem was solved. But on the way to Kazi, the concept of greed started to set in, because we know material nature is that you have some wealth and it is never enough. As the old saying goes, too much wealth is never enough. So he started to sort of meditate upon how he was going to be so rich, and then he thought, wait a minute, just hold on. It's like I've got this stone here, and he just had it in the sand, he threw it away. So he's duped me, he's tricked me, because actually if he threw it away it can't be worth that much, so he must have something more, must have some precious jewels. So so I have to see him about that. So he turned around, went and saw Sanatan, come back to Sanatan, and Sanatan's sitting there. He said, "You again? I thought I'd never see you again." And he said, "Yeah, I know you tricked me, because I know that you have something more precious than this. Why would you keep it there, just discard it like that? So, what have you got that's so precious?" And Sanatan says, "Yes, well, I do have something more precious than that, but you can't have both. If you want something more precious, first you have to get this stone and throw it in the river as far as you can." So the Brahmin, he gets the stone, he throws it back in the river, he comes back to Sanatan, and Sanatan says, "Yes, I have got something more precious, it's way more precious, but it's not material jewels, it's the jewel of the love of Sri Krishna and Radha, which you will get through the chanting of Hare Krishna and Rama. Just chant this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare." Just sit there and chant, forget about your daughter, she'll get married anyway without you, whether you're there or not, and just chant this mantra. So this Brahmana began to chant the mantra in the same spot and became a great saint, Jivan Chakravarti. So, moral of the story is, it's just like all the wealth in the world doesn't match up to the wealth of a transcendental wealth of love of Krishna. So, even though in the material world we have so many, well, we don't have so many jewels anymore. If we did, precious jewels. We think about it, when you think of precious jewels, you think of the crown jewels in the museum in London or something. Everything else is fake jewels. zirconia, fake pearls. Like this whole world, actually, everything's fake. That's the catchword at the moment, isn't it? Fake news, right? Or fake leaders, fake gurus. So in this sort of like fake world, people are trying to get some nectar in this material life, but it's very difficult. They don't know what the real happiness is. Just like in the next sloka. I'll just read it because there's no purport, so it won't offend anybody tomorrow. For a devotee who has actually developed bhava, the pleasure derived from karma after moksha appears to be like a drop in the presence of the sea. So this is the standout potency of the Lord's holy name. So in this sort of society, nobody can actually come near that ocean of nectar because all these fake social values that people have to try and extract happiness is not based on any shastra. Prabhupada once described this democracy as demon crazy, right? And then he used to quote Gandhi, right? Correct me if I'm right with this quote, but he used to quote Gandhi. When Gandhi went to England in 1920 or something, he went there in his loincloth, and the reporters asked him, "What do you think of our British democracy?" And he goes, "I think democracy would be a good idea." So that's the. So anyway, consequently, in our situation, still that inherent human nature is there. Our search for pleasure, and it comes in the form of the four stages: dharma, artha, karma, and moksha. That is always there within people. But first, there is a tendency in human beings to have the aspect of religiosity, and from there economic development, which develops into sense gratification, and then moksha. It's a cycle that goes on and on. If you look throughout the history of civilizations, you will see the cycle. Srila Prabhupada actually quotes one cycle like that. He quotes the founding fathers, that the founding fathers, inverted commas, of the pilgrims that sailed from England to the United States of America, which was just Americas, just found by Columbus, and they started a colony, a religious colony there. And they were very, very pious, observed all religious principles. You imagine the first building they would have built as a church, and everything was dedicated to God. So when they put all the crops in the field, the first crops would be always offered to God, and so forth and so on. And so then, because of their piety and their commitment, they prospered. So then came storehouses, and then the towns, and then factories, and so on, and then economic development started to usher in. So then you can see that from there more and more people came, and then now they found the United States of America. Of course, Prabhupada explains that later on the economic development even sort of went further into when steam was discovered, the trains went across America, and then came electricity, and then came the motor cars, and so forth and so on. So this economic development continued on, and then we can see a sort of turn somewhere like in my very young youth, around the 60s. There was it was called the Cultural Revolution. Right, and the Cultural Revolution upended everything. It was just like a sudden turn. Like in the 50s, when I was brought up, all the churches were full on Sundays because there's nowhere else to go. Everything was shut. Maybe service station was open for 1 hour in the afternoon if you want to get petrol. That's it. You could get nothing. There's nothing to do. Couldn't even go to a sports match or whatever, play sport, right? It was just a day dedicated to God. So then the turning of the corner, we saw that, the Cultural Revolution brought in in sexual liberation, so why should we have all these morals? And then there was an increase in the slaughterhouses and the meat production increased. Gambling, that was restricted so much that it was sort of like very, very restricted to maybe some small shop where you bet on a horse or something. But I remember still the first casino that came to Perth, or Melbourne, and then there was a sort of complete expansion of that. And then intoxication, well, can you say about intoxication? You can get liquor any time of day or night now. Before, the hotels used to shut at 6 o'clock sharp, you know, like, and there's no alcohol anywhere, with the speak of Sunday. So Kali is wringing his hands, you know, like all this is happening, doesn't it? Like illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, gambling, bringing on, right? So you can understand how Kali is just sort of pervading everywhere. So of course we've got sense gratification. And then what we have after sense gratification, don't get enough sense gratification, you go for liberation. So people start to look what else is there besides this. This is not real happiness. So they look towards some sort of guide. So what they get, it's a fake society, so what they get, they look towards fake gurus to give them instruction, because they're all in that system. It's the material to do with the three material modes of nature. Like Prabhupada says, Dharma Kaitalo, Dharma Projita Kaitalo, Tra Nirmatsa. So completely, there's so many cheating religions. So everybody become a guru. That's a great business, right? So now these days, what do you have? You have fitness gurus, you have money gurus, you have so many different. Actually, if you're any good at anything, then you're a guru, right? So it's sort of chipping away. So when we were young, we were looking, maybe in the 70s, we were looking at this as, you know, we're looking for something else, as for a lot of young people. So there was a sort of proliferation of gurus that actually come along offering enlightenment. So there was a whole swag of them. I just remember one particular one. This is a good example. That I was this 13-year-old boy. Right? He come from India. That in his at a very young age, he was very knowledgeable. And he was giving good, solid lectures in India, and he was found by some people in the West who thought, wow, he could really do well in the West. So they started to advertise him, and the advertisement was that God is coming. Right? So prepare yourself, God is coming. Maharaji is coming, and he will give you enlightenment. So we raised our curiosity. I don't know if we're ready for God yet, but we went to the ashram once, and it was a very, very warm atmosphere. I know they were all singing some nice Bob Dylan song which should be released, and we all felt good. And then they brought out film, a camera, and they started showing pictures of a 13-year-old boy with a moustache and a fat face, and everyone's going, okay. So they were all excited about seeing his features. And I thought, oh, this is strange. And so we all got up and we left. And so it was the Divine Light ashram, and what he had to offer was enlightenment. That he would touch your forehead with his finger, and you'd feel this sort of like zap, right? And reel back, and you'd sort of see this light, the light within. So that's what was on offer. So that was a pretty good way. Just initiation was you just get zapped, right? And then all of a sudden you're adherent. So it was a good way to go. I think there was some money involved too. You have to give a fair bit of money there, because actually he developed a fair bit of wealth. So he went to the States and he started to accumulate some wealth. He had a very attractive secretary, and at a very young age he fell in love with his secretary. He married that secretary, and they retired to the big ranch they had in the country. He said, I don't want to be guru anymore, I'm okay now. They had a lot of kids, and now he's still on the circuit actually, and he's a motivational guru. So so you can pay a lot of money and he'll give you motivation and you can become materially rich. So there's one example of a guru, right? So it's like a repetitive cycle that we see time and time again because people are stuck in the material world, and unless you have some spiritual understanding, you will not know where to look. So Srila Prabhupada quotes the Srimad Bhagavatam here. The Canto 1, chapter 1, verse 2, beautiful sloka, Dharma, Projita Caitavocha, Nirmatsa Pranamo, Nirmatsaranam, Sata, Vajam, Vastu, Matra, Vastu, Shiva, Dam, Tapa, Prayamulanam. So, completely rejecting all religious, all religions that are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understood by the pure devotee in heart. And this highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries of material nature. And by itself, this Bhagavad Purana is sufficient for God realization because it gives you love of Krishna. So, in the first chapter of his purport, in that particular verse, Srila Prabhupada speaks, he said that like actually with all this artha, the Dhamma, Artha, Karma and Moksha, there is religiosity involved in all of that. So if you want to be religious and enjoy sense gratification, where do you go? You go to the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and it will give you instructions how you can enjoy, not in this life and in future life according to religious principles. But in this day and age, as we see, because religion has been completely, virtually dismantled, we have irreligious sense gratification. So Srila Prabhupada, it describes in that verse that a religious life is a barbarous condition. So it's the condition of animal life. So we come down to that, polished animals, eating, sleeping, mating and defending. So in this confusion, who do people turn to? So we talk about everything fake gurus. So who is the real guru? Where do we find the real guru? So it is said, Mahajena Yena Gata Sapanta. Sapanta means that you should follow the way of the Mahajans, the real gurus. And so the Mahajans are the ones that adhere to the Shastras. This was actually instructions that was given by Krishna for us human beings to actually exist on this planet. And these instructions are being handed down from spiritual master, from one authority to another, and it comes in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, Srila Prabhupada translated the Bhagavad Gita and he added it as it is, because people, unscrupulous gurus, do get their hands on the Bhagavad Gita and they interpret the Bhagavad Gita according to how they see it and how it suits them. And so then again, it becomes a Dharma Praitava, a cheating religion. So Prabhupada actually propounded this highest truth of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the truth of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he never deviated from these principles. So when Srila Prabhupada came, all these other gurus were there, but we saw throughout time, very short period of time, all these gurus fell away. Right? They all just disappeared one after another. And then Srila Prabhupada was a standout. So in the old days we made the sign, I think Prabhupada was coming in 1972, 73, I wasn't here, and my Maharaj might have been there in Melbourne. And then this big poster, and there's a picture of Prabhupada looking up like that, and underneath that a caption saying, Srila Prabhupada, the spiritual master at whose feet all other spiritual masters sit. Right? And they put it everywhere. all over the city, plastered along walls and hoardings, and you couldn't miss it. Right? I remember that was like 72, and I used to sell books in 78 going up these alleyways, and that sign would still be there, the poster would still be there. It was very, very enlivening. So everybody else came crashing down. So Srila Prabhupada's giving this eternal knowledge. Just like there's one other example of everybody sitting at the feet of someone who's giving instruction, and that was Sukadeva Goswami, the actual speaker, the reciter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because he was endowed with eternal knowledge, he was self-realised, he was only a young boy, he just was born. Very young age, he left virtually because he stayed in the womb, didn't see any reason to come out because he was an impersonalist until he heard his father speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. He assimilated it, and all of a sudden became inspired, and he came out of his mother's womb. Poor mother, but ladies are thinking. So anyway, he wandered off, and Vyasadev's going, son, come back, but he was already self-realised. So it was only a very short time he was walking around, and there was this great meeting of sages because the king, what happened to the king? Does anybody know? The king got cursed by a Brahmin boy. He only had 7 days to live, so the word went out. So all the sages went to the forest. I forget which forest it was. It wasn't the name of Shirani, it was another forest. Yeah, so they were all assembled at the forest there, and all these great sages, Atri, Vyasadeva, Narada Muni was there, so many sages from so many years back, full of wisdom, and they're all discussing amongst themselves who's going to be the speaker, who's going to give this instruction. And there was different various contradictions about what the instructions should be, because at that point in time Krishna had just left, and there was still a lot of residue left, but the people saying, well, this section of the Vedas is the most important section, you should read this Veda, or you should read this, but Sukadeva only had 7 days, he didn't have time to read the Vedas, he wanted to direct instruction. So while they were debating amongst themselves, this 16-year-old naked boy being followed by all these kids who were laughing at him and sort of jeering him, whatever, he come into the clearing. And of course the kids, when they saw all the sages, they just scattered, and there he was, and then everybody saw him. This beautiful boy, you could tell that his speeches were so godly, that they all stood up, gave him respect. The 16-year-old boy invited him to sit on the Vyasasana, and he spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's actually one of the Mahajans, one of the 12 Mahajans of this universe. So then he gave good instruction to everybody, and this is one of the slokas, Dharma Projita Caitanya. So this is the principles of religion. So in this day and age, people gravitate towards some type of emancipation, liberation, but if they're caught in their situation, they don't know what liberation means. When they get old, they think liberation means maybe getting a camper van, travelling around Australia. That used to be the common sort of theme throughout the 90s, 80s, 90s. We'll get a camper van, travel around Australia. I don't know if they still do so much, probably do. Or some other sea change, live by the sea, get a pension, but there's no liberation. The ultimate, some people think the ultimate thing is one of these boat cruises, right? So you see these boats traversing all over the ocean, right? 2,000, 3,000 people on the boat going to some little island with 500 people crammed on the island trying to extract some nectar. And 2 weeks of liberation, but then that can turn really, really sour very quickly if the boat breaks down or some virus hits the boat or something, then it becomes a hellhole. So the liberation is nowhere to look. So people who are stuck, because they feel the heat, the society, because it's not based on any form of religious principles, it is going alright, because Kali Yuga, he's pushing it, so he's pushing the envelope, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and you'll be happy, intoxication, if you get all the pills, that if you're unhappy, take some pills. And it's quite amazing that so many people, like beautiful people, wealthy people, well-known people, they're miserable. You have all the wealth in the world, and you see that they're going to all these rehabilitation clinics, and they're in courts, divorce courts. They're totally miserable. What's going on? These are the people that everybody's emulating. They should be happy. So then there's this frustration that people want to get out. And Srila Prabhupada said that people will find that the life in the cities is so hellish that they want to escape to the country. Right? But in this day and age, escaping to the country is nothing much in the country anymore, really. A few towns, a few agro farms. What do you do? Where do you go? And the weather is all awry. You get the bushfires, you get the floods, you try and grow something, good luck. Self-sufficiency. So it's very difficult, because we're right in the middle of this sort of episode of Kali Yuga, and it's very intense. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to start these farming communities so people can actually come here for shelter. And you spend a couple of days in the village, or you go on Monday, or see the people coming in, and by Wednesday or Thursday, correct me if I'm wrong, by Wednesday or Thursday they feel a relief, because it's so nice here. They think it's so nice here because it's relief from the three modes of material nature. In the village, they probably don't know what it is, that it's a spiritual force here that's inspiring everybody, but they feel the potency of it. And so Srila Prabhupada said whatever we can do to help make people Krishna conscious, just like Sanatana Goswami, he gave Krishna consciousness to the materially motivated Brahmin. Also have to say that Lord Shiva, he's the greatest Vaishnava. He's always thinking of Krishna. So therefore, when sometimes some devotees or potential devotees come to him for benediction, and he will trick them in one way like this, and he won't give them material wealth, he will give them Krishna, he'll lead them to Krishna. So this has happened to quite a few devotees who felt the love of Lord Shiva one way or another. And Lord Shiva's there to help. So Lord Shiva, so benedictions. So Krishna consciousness is people come to Krishna consciousness here, and like in the footsteps of Sanatana Goswami and his brothers, and the other Goswamis also, but Rupa. So they were great, the ultimate devotees, the utmost devotees. They were Paramahamsas. They were always chanting the names of the Lord incessantly, sleep very little. And Sanatana himself, he would eat very, very little. He'd just he'd just go and collect some flour, beg some flour at lunchtime, and then he would light a fire and make a chapati. Actually, even further than chapatis, without any salt of course, he'd just roll up the flour into a ball, right, and throw it on the fire. And then when the ball was blackened and he deemed that it was cooked in the middle, he would eat it. I forget what's that called. Does anyone remember? Because they still make it at the Madhya Temple, and they offer it to Sanatana Goswami. It's just a little ball of flour, right, which they cook, right? That's what he eat. And then if you go there at lunchtime at the temple, after they've offered it, they distribute it, everybody gets a little piece of it and you try it. So that's the ecstasy. You just maintain body and soul together. As did Rupa, and they wrote these voluminous volumes about Krishna guitar and Krishna's pastimes for the benefit of us devotees, and it's just all coming out now. Very exciting time that we're seeing all this wonderful literature and the science of God realization. It's a science actually which is just becoming revealed. And so we're also described that we're also Rupanugas, that we're following in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami in our practice of Krishna consciousness. And just like Sanatan, the purpose is to actually give Krishna consciousness to everybody in the form of the Maha Mantra, divine mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Oh, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah. That's it.
Because you mentioned that when Sanatana Goswami saw that man who came and he says, don't worry about your daughter, she'll get married. So in the modern day, that would paint a very bad picture on the devotees that you're neglecting your daughter. So how to apply this practically?
Well, all I can say is that even Lord Caitanya's grandfather, spiritual master, Ishvara Puri spiritual master, who was that? Sorry, I just got a mental lapse here. Madhavendra Puri, yeah. He said, Lord, please excuse me if I forgo all traditions. You know, that I know I owe obligations to my forefathers, to my relatives, to my country, to everybody. But I'm so absorbed in this love of Krishna that I just am completely not able to do it. So that's a bit of a clue that we get, that to actually get to that level where you completely drop everything, you have to absorb that level of Krishna consciousness where you're completely immersed. Whether Sanatan literally said that or not, I just sort of read that in the storyline. But the purport was there. He did stay, he didn't go back and became Krishna conscious. Now the byproduct is because sometimes people say, well, this is a good way to get out of my household duties, that I'll just become Krishna conscious. And that example was also there when Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu was travelling in India, and this Brahmana came up to him and said, Mahaprabhu, my Lord, I just want to become Krishna conscious and travel with you everywhere. And he says, what's your status? I'm a grihasta. And he said, well, actually, you can become Krishna conscious and fulfill your grihasta duties first, because that was your obligation. So that was a lesson from Lord Caitanya, that we don't artificially do this. Sometimes we have seen this happen, and it causes great grief to the family and to the relatives when it's done prematurely. So this was maybe a sort of extraordinary circumstance, but normally that circumstance should not happen. Yeah.
Prabhu,
Haribol, I'll give you the microphone because we're all on radio here.
I was just thinking about how you mentioned
Hang on
that.
just a second.
I was just thinking about that Guruji who said 13-year-old boy, and many gurus came through that enlightenment period. You said it was called some sort of enlightenment.
Yeah, it was a period of enlightenment. I can rattle off about half a dozen names.
Yeah.
Of course, the Beatles made one famous, the Maharishi, and his speciality was that he could make you fly. You could get the city of flying, right? So there was a whole thing attached to that, to see people flying. You can ask Bhakta about that. He was a devout member of the Maharaji for a while. He tried to fly, and unfortunately his back's out now, 40 years later, because he's sort of trying to stretch his legs and take off. And his landing was pretty hard. He's a big fella and he put his back out, so he has to see chiropractors all the time at the moment. So there was him.
So I wanted to ask about those that age that's ushered in, in the 60s, saying the false gurus or the ones that were inspired to teach but got distracted by Maya. But one comment before I ask the question is they seem to enhance Srila Prabhupada because he had the absolute truth. So that was like, the background being very dark with the false gurus, but the true guru came through. So it enhanced his teachings. And you mentioned fake as a word that's common now. We see in other words, more common is woke. Woke. He's a woke consciousness or anyway, it's a new
new word, yeah.
Yeah, and fake and woke. So I just wanted to ask your opinion on, is the fakeness and expressions like woke, do you still feel that there's a search for truth in a sense of real truth, and has the age actually gone away?
Okay, thank you. So there is an innocence in human beings when they're born, and sometimes they actually look for the real truth, just like in the 60s and the Cultural Revolution. In the beginning, a lot of the seekers, which Prabhupada called hippies, they were very sincere about their search. They went to India, they went to all these different gurus and that. And some of them actually found the truth in Srila Prabhupada. There was Prabhupada's famous saying is, I made hippies into happies, right? He loved saying that with a big smile on his face. But a lot of the others just fell back into materialism. There's a friend of mine once wrote a letter in the paper. He said that this whole generation let everybody down, where we have so many concepts and ideals and we're going to change society from within, but everybody just re-entered society and failed, right? But that sincerity is there, and a lot of it is actually that we keep having birth time and time again, is because like the ignorance that is there with the society today is they have no knowledge of the soul. They're lost. It's a lost society. So that becomes an animal society where you don't understand what's the difference between body and soul. But because the soul transmigrates and so many living entities are taking birth again as human beings, whatever they did in their last life, Krishna said Bhagavad Gita that if you are unfulfilled in your quest for the truth, and in the next life you take birth in a family of pious people, or rich merchants or whatever, rich people. So people are taking birth again and they're sort of taking up the course. So there's a sort of like a plethora. It's not like a sort of general definition, but there's so many people that are actually sincere that are coming through. And that's why it's so nice to have these places as shelter, because even last week I was speaking with a couple of people and they were saying, I felt like I've done this before, like my last life or whatever. So there's just a continuation. So sometimes when we're out on the street there and nothing's happening and it's been a terrible day, maybe raining and everybody's ignoring you, and all of a sudden someone comes up and grabs a book and I've been looking for this, or whatever. You've probably got many stories to tell us of situations like that somebody just sets off just being there, you set off the spark of the soul within the heart. So it's an exciting time because we don't know how this next generation is going to go, and it's actually ultimately the result is up to Krishna. As Prabhupada said, we just have to do what as service we can, and then the results will manifest. Krishna's in control.
It seems to me that the word faith being manifest across the media is almost an expression of their frustration, which could be a precursor to a sort of a more sincere search for truth. You know?
Certainly, Prabhu, certainly, because, you know, it just says that's a cycle there, economic development, and from economic development you get cheaters and the cheated, you know, so like that's what economic development means, isn't it? Somebody gets rich, a whole lot of other people get poor, and there's this frustration there. So Prabhupada said there's a society of the cheaters and the cheated, and of course the fake guru industry comes up on that whole principle there that we can make money out of this. So people are actually becoming frustrated. So yeah, there is a search. So it's just the question of using our intelligence to implement Krishna consciousness wherever we can, so people can access it.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Good. Jai, all glory to Srila Prabhupada.